most journalists who go there, and I'll be coming there probably in the next few weeks, they don't ask these specific questions because they're definitely afraid of losing access to the campaign.
Hmm.
I don't really give a damn. I probably won't get access after this, but
Yeah, they don't acknowledge me either.
yeah, I've been told it goes a little worse than that. I'd love to know if you have any knowledge in terms of kind of some bought and paid for relationships where there's been some money exchanges under the table, those kinds of things. We see it in Flint, Detroit. A lot of cities have corruption where officials that have supported Mayor Pete have, gotten some kickbacks, shall we say, for that because he's painting himself as I'm from outside of Washington. They're corrupt in Washington. They do things, in back rooms, and I'm fresh and I don't come from there. But it seems like a lot of the things that he's criticized, I've heard from multiple residents, his administration is guilty of. Can you kind of talk about that?
Absolutely. That's exactly how Pete conducts business here in South Bend. There's a local activist and Pastor Mario Sims who's very vocal on Facebook as well, and he calls it out. There's members of the Board of Public Safety, and the Board of Public Safety is the governing body over the police and fire department. So any charges of wrongdoing made against the police or disciplinary measures that need to be taken against a police officer are to go before this Board of Public Safety, which is appointed by the mayor. And Mayor Pete was so proud of himself and took every opportunity to tell people that he had a majority minority Board of Public Safety that he appointed in South Bend. But nobody really knew who these people were. In fact, when there was a town hall at Washington High School over here on the west side, I think it was less than a week after Eric Logan died, Mayor Pete and the chief of police, Scott Raskowski, sat on that stage and thought that they were going to hide behind the Board of Public Safety and thought that they were going to silence us all and hush us all up when we were demanding answers and demanding action and demanding discipline up to and including termination, possible criminal charges. They thought they would hide behind this. Oh, well, we don't have that power. All that power is in the hands of the Board of Public Safety. And that's all they would really say on it. And I was in the audience and I had no problem. I wasn't going to stand up and wait my turn to be handed the microphone because I already know how that was going to go. So I sat right in my seat and I said, who makes up the Board of Public Safety and what are their credentials? I knew who was on the board. I knew, their names, their occupations. I knew the history behind how they came to be appointed to that board. We have a pastor who was given a piece of property where he now operates his church. Even the leader of the local NAACP, Michael Patton, I mean, he was given $500,000, I think, by the South Bend Heritage Foundation to build some houses, and we've seen no results. Where's the money? And then, on the flip side of that, then we see when what is the NAACP in South Bend doing? Are they standing behind these minority officers that have left in droves the South Bend Police Department? There are several minority officers who have left the South Bend Police Department during Mayor Pete's term who have filed discrimination lawsuits against the city. And where's the NAACP? Where's Michael Patton? They're standing up at the podium with Mayor Pete and signing off on everything, rubber stamping everything. They are not standing with the Black community in South Bend. And we see that over and over again.
It sounds like they're getting some funding to do that.
Absolutely. And they're doing it in broad daylight in front of everybody's faces. One thing I want to mention about the Board of Public Safety is during that town hall, because I pressed Pete and I pressed him and he finally broke down. He didn't name their names, but he said, we have a businessman, we have a former police officer, we have a former firefighter, whatever. And he admitted that there was a vacancy on the Board of Public Safety, which I hadn't even realized that. So it was obviously a long-standing vacancy on this Board of Public Safety. So he admitted that. And one of the things that the community demanded right then and there at the town hall was that he open that vacant seat for public application. And they did. They accepted applications. There was a deadline. I think it was sometime mid-August. The deadline came. There were applicants, qualified applicants. And inexplicably, the city extends the deadline. Okay, fine. Extend the deadline. Did you not get the candidate you wanted? What's going on? Deadline was extended. And then the next thing we know, they're announcing that they have chosen the person to fill the vacancy on the Board of Public Safety. And it is a Latina woman, and I apologize, I don't know her name. It's a Latina woman who is employed by the city of South Bend in the Human Resources Department. A slap in the face, an absolute slap in the face. And this is what you get from Pete. He will hear you. He will listen. He will hear you. He'll listen to you with that smug look on his face, and then he will turn around and his administration will do it's seemingly make the worst possible choice. I mean, just go in the complete opposite direction. And the city offers no explanation. I received a direct message on Facebook from one of those applicants. And this is a woman that I've never talked to before in my life. And she said, I applied for that position. I applied during the first round before the original application cutoff date. And I'm going to misquote it. I would have to look it up. I didn't have it prepared. But basically, this woman has a bachelor's, a master's, and a doctorate in public safety. She is not employed by the city of South Bend. And she says, so they certainly didn't pick the most qualified candidate. I know that a former South Bend police officer, 22-year veteran of the United States military, former Common Council candidate, also applied for that position. He also happens to be an African American, and he didn't even make it to an interview round. He also has a pending lawsuit against the city and the South Bend Police Department, but that's a story for another day.
Well, it's interesting because he's running nationally, and obviously he's doing these, champagne and caviar fundraisers. But he's talking about this broad coalition he's building. It doesn't seem to be reflected in the polls. In South Bend, did you ever see him out, like, with the people? Like in the neighborhoods, not downtown where it's being gentrified, but like in the trenches with the people? Because at least for the last 2 years, maybe 3, he's been trying to run for DNC chair, then establishing relationships to run for president, and now running for president. I don't mean this humorously. I'm just asking, what is his qualifications to run for president? It doesn't sound like, other than dime a dozen gentrification, which I could name you 50 other mayors who have done that. What is the big thing he's done in South Bend?
There isn't a big thing he's done in South Bend other than continue on with, the system as it's been. We refer to the St. Joseph County Democratic Party as the machine here. It is a machine. I don't believe that the majority of the Democrats in leadership in this county are true Democrats. They certainly don't behave like the Democratic Party. They certainly behave and operate and run the county and the city like a Republican. And what do I know? But that's just my opinion. I don't see anything that qualifies Pete to run the country or be president, other than clearly he has access to the 1%, to the elite, to the money, and we all know how that works. It's business as usual. So I guess if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for maybe a younger, more stylish, more attractive gay Donald Trump, I guess you got it, because that's just my opinion. I've been saying, even before Pete announced he was running for president, I've been telling people he is a racist, corrupt fraud, period.
And yes. Why do you view him as racist? Obviously, we know he's had tense relations with the black community, but obviously being racist is a step further. Has he done or not done things that you view as racist?
Well, he supports and protects racist police, period. It's not just with the Eric Logan case. There's been many cases, just the South Bend Police Department. There was an 18-year-old young man. It's the Franklin case. You can look that up. And matter of fact, the South Bend Police Department has the entire Franklin case file on their Transparency Hub. It is the only piece of litigation that they've published to the Transparency Hub. But he was, I think, 18-year-old black man who was sleeping in his bed at his mother's house, and a couple South Bend Police Department officers kicked in the door, raided the home with no warrant, and assaulted him. And I mean assaulted him, tased him, beat the living daylights out of him. Turns out he was the wrong guy. The Franklin family sued and won. They were awarded an $18 settlement. And then the city of South Bend, under Mayor Pete, sued his family to recoup $1,500 in legal fees, which, I mean, they won their civil rights case against the South Bend Police Department.
What do you mean? What do you mean an $18 settlement? That sounds.
He got $1 for each count. He was awarded not settlement. He was awarded an $18 judgment by the jury. $18. You should look that case up. And there's been several instances of just outright racism and corruption within South Bend Police Department. Not only that, but it goes into the county as well. There's the case of Jihad Vasquez in South Bend, a 16-year-old Black boy who, this was just a handful of years ago, definitely under Mayor Pete's administration, who was found hanging Klan style on the south side of South Bend the day after he was suspended from school for getting into a fight with a white student who had called him the N-word. The white student's family is known to be Klan. I'll just say it, absolutely known to be Klan. And, you know, the county, the coroner, who was previously the sheriff, no, I think he was previously a chief of police. He was appointed chief of South Bend Police for a short time. He was the St. Joseph County coroner at the time that Jihad Vasquez was murdered. He has no medical background, the coroner, and he ruled Jihad Vasquez's death a suicide. There was no autopsy. They had his body cremated the next day within 24 hours, never told his mother that she had the right to demand an autopsy. Told the mother, I know a suicide when I see one. And that was it, case closed. So the mother then, you know, went to Pete at a city council meeting and pleaded with him, help me get an investigation into my son's death. And Pete, you know, gave her, you know, said, call my office, call and make an appointment. She's called, she's emailed, so have activists on her behalf. And Pete never met with her. Pete turned his back on her.
What was her son's name?
Jihad Vasquez.
Mm-hmm. And he was found hanging in a Klan style, you said?
We say hanging Klan style because that's exactly what it was. I mean, he was hanging from it was like kind of like an electrical tower, and he wasn't that far off the ground. I mean, you'll have to look up the case, but there's a lot of evidence, you know, as far as like his belongings and where they were, what was missing. And he had belongings missing that have never turned up. I think one of them might have even been his cell phone. You know, the case any 16-year-old found hanging on the south side of anybody's town, that death needs to be investigated fully and completely. You can't just have the coroner with no medical background say, I know a suicide when I see one, and have the boy's body cremated the next day with no autopsy. That's absurd.
I mean, when you look at 90 minutes away, Chicago, you have Rahm Emanuel covering up Laquan McDonald's death. It's different, but it doesn't sound too different, where you have a mayor basically covering up for his police department.
Time and time and time again. Yes.
And what would you say? Because, you know, the media, is the national media looking into any of this? Because there has been journalists on the ground there. Do they ask about what he's done in South Bend? What are they doing there? Because I've seen CNN reporters and other reporters there, but it doesn't particularly seem like any of this is being reported.
It seems like the mainstream national media is contacting Pete's campaign and saying, hey, we're coming to town. We want to talk to people who support you. Can we have a list of people who support you? And that's who they're talking to. There is, you know, the Young Turks Investigates. Jonathan Larson has been here many times. Please visit his website and the Young Turks Investigates website. And their YouTube channel. He does a live stream every day, and he's discussed Mayor Pete in South Bend, and he's written many, many pieces. He has, he's really dug in, and he's uncovered documents that the South Bend Common Council claims they've never seen regarding the South Bend police tapes, and a questionnaire that Pete's lawyers had the whistleblower fill out. Mm. You know, the local media says, you know, well, we've never seen that. The Common Council says, we've never seen that. But Jonathan Larson at the Young Turks has it. You know, and he's done a lot of reporting. But outside of it's starting to pick up a little since Pete's been having problems with the black voter thing that have really been making headlines. But that's just been in the last week. And I don't really see, you know, that the mainstream media grabbing a hold like that. I don't. And it's puzzling on one hand, but on the other hand, when you see who he's getting his money from, you know, and where these fundraisers are being held, well, that kind of explains it all, doesn't it?
And while he was mayor, did he get a lot of support from Chamber of Commerce type people, wealthy people? Obviously, Chicago's nearby. Who was funding him while he was mayor?
Well, it's hard to say because his campaign, they destroyed the 2011 campaign finance reports, which is perfectly legal to do. So it's hard to tell. There are some names and some records out there, and it's all, big name business folks, names I don't care to drop, but it's out there. There have been stories done on it. Jonathan Larson, the Young Turks Investigates, he broke all of that down. So yeah, I mean, it's obvious that he's
So,
always.
so you just casually dropped that his campaign destroyed his
Mhm.
campaign finance documents.
Yes.
So those are not findable online.
No, they're not findable anywhere.
Interesting.
Hmm.
So it just seems like this is a media concocted figure, and if you peel, you don't even have to peel back that far. It's the same old corruption, just with a prettier, younger face.
Absolutely, 100%.
Unbelievable. Well, thank you for taking the time. I'm going to be in South Bend soon, fortunately, so I'll talk to you and others. And yeah, I'll ask you one last question. If he were to win the nomination, you think he'd beat Trump? To me, it seems like this is perfect, the perfect foil for Trump to basically cancel out Trump's corruption, because Pete's corruption is right there to be exposed.
I absolutely think he would beat Trump if he becomes the nominee. Absolutely.
Oh, he would beat Trump.
I think he would. I think he would. I wouldn't have said that before Donald Trump was elected. I would have said absolutely not. That's absurd. There's no way. But now that we see Donald Trump did it. He pulled it off and he was elected. However, that came about. I'd say nothing is impossible. And yeah, I think he could beat him because and I think that's exactly the reason why these people chose him, whoever it was that chose people to judge of all people, to try to get the nomination. I mean, just look at him. They thought he'll appeal to millennials, he'll appeal to, LGBTQ, and certainly he'll appeal to the black voters. Womp, womp, womp. I don't know who lied to those people, but again, it was probably a matter of, they did their study groups and their focus groups and they rounded up the 10 or 12 black people in South Bend who do support Pete Buttigieg and said, look, we come with black support too. No, he does not.
And it seems like those black figures, a lot of them have gotten kind of sweetheart deals from the administration.
Absolutely. Sharon McBride, Councilwoman Sharon McBride, she was the councilwoman at the center of the microphone controversy. At the event, we don't even know what that event was. It was announced that some black leaders were going to gather to show their support for Pete. They made it very clear at the beginning of the event that this was in no way an endorsement of Pete, but then they went on to basically endorse him and whatnot. So as you may or not know, a Black Lives Matter activist, Igor Rodriguez, he kind of disrupted it, ended up with the microphone. It was wrestled away from him. But Sharon McBride, she, in my opinion, she's a prime example of bought and paid for support for Pete Buttigieg. She was a city employee for many, many years.
Just so the audience knows, she is African American.
She is, yes.
Okay.
Sharon McBride is African American, yes. She is married to a South Bend police officer. A lot of people don't know that. I don't know if they're still legally married, but she is either the current or former spouse of South Bend police officer. Both of them have filed racial discrimination lawsuits against the city of South Bend. Sharon McBride, like I said, she was an employee of the city of South Bend for many years in many different departments. There have been allegations of wrongdoing on her part, possibly even some theft or abuse of her position within the city. And after a period of time when the city terminated her finally, right around that time, there was an EEOC suit filed. She filed against the city on racial discrimination. And then right around the time she dropped that suit, she is hired by St. Joseph County as executive director of community corrections, having no education, experience, or background in corrections or law enforcement. And then next thing you know, Ms. McBride is caucused into the vacant common council seat for the 3rd district. So she was appointed by caucus in, I think, early 2018. Again, where did this come from? She'd never really been active in politics. She wasn't a community activist. She was simply, a former city employee, wife of a police officer, and now somehow managed to land a position with the county, an executive position in community corrections. And now we turn around and she's being appointed to the Common Council. She did win re-election in her district last month in November, but I do always point out this fact. There was an opponent against McBride in the primaries. Her name was Barbara Matson. She filed the paperwork, all the appropriate paperwork, to run in the primary, and that was the extent of her participation in the primary. But her name did still go on the ballot. She did not campaign. She did not participate in debates. She didn't buy a sign. She did nothing. And she got 321 votes to McBride's 1,100 in the primary. So, you know, and that's another sad fact around South Bend is people don't vote in South Bend. Poor people, people of color, simply don't vote. And the people in power, the machine, they know that and they capitalize on that. So yeah, it's no surprise to me that Sharon McBride, of all people, is now traveling with Mayor Pete, trying to convince people that Black people at home support him. She owes him. She owes him big.
This is what they call the next generation of leadership. Unbelievable. Thank you for taking the time. I'm sure we'll be in touch. I'm planning on coming there shortly. So thank you and be well.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to meeting you.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.